action-packed young adult novel full of witches and darklings, a shadowful. Oh, and you cannot forget those crazy guys who can rip out your heart. Hello, my bookworms, and welcome to I Don't Really Care Day, because I don't really feel too good. I've got a migraine. My voice keeps going, so I apologize for that. Now, you have to admit it, though. The Doctor Who shirt, it looks awesome. Keep calm, dumpling. On to the main reason we're all here today. It is my review on Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. When I first purchased this book, I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bit hesitant about it. And, despite the hesitance, I was very happy about this book. I'm starting to realize that now. Books I'm hesitant about, I'm tending to enjoy. The reason for my hesitation, although yes, I enjoy young adult, it is just these never-ending themes of love triangles and everlasting love that do start to get on my nerves. And, well, if you read this bit up here, it says a love that will last forever. And that was just a major put off for me because that's not why I read books. If, like me, you have a specific issue with that going on, don't worry, don't fret. This book, that is not the main focal point, which is awesome. I was very, very excited and happy that that was not the main focal point. I mean, at points in times, it laces itself in there where it shouldn't be, but all in all, this is a very action-y book, and I loved it. Let's get into the review now, as usual. My own synopsis of the book, what I liked and what I didn't like. This book takes place in Russia, like a fantasy version of Russia. You have the main character, Elena. I'm not exactly sure, but I keep calling her Elena. You have her, and it begins with her and her friend Mal in an orphanage. And it's never really explained how they end up in the orphanage, what happened to their parents. Probably killed by the Darkling, I'm assuming, but they're in the orphanage, they form a bond, and they basically kind of become inseparable as children. As the first chapter progresses, these people come to visit Elena and Mal because they want them to prove that they can do something that, humans cannot do, and that is magic. So these people are witches, and pretty much Elena just calls them out on it. She's like, you guys are witches, and they kind of take offense to that term, because technically they are these things called Grishas, and they're extremely beautiful people who can produce magic. But the coolest thing about these people is you think of witches or wizards, and they can do anything they want. They can open doors, they can make light, they can make darkness, they can do whatever they want. But with the Grisha, they only have one ability. So one can make darkness, one can make light, one can make you amazingly beautiful, and one can control fire, and so on and so forth. So one ability, and it's very cool from that aspect that they can't do everything, that they actually have to rely on each other. Basically, as the next chapter goes on, you pretty much assume neither Mal or Elena proved their worth to the Grisha because Elena is a map maker and Mal is a hunter. They are going to cross the Shadowfold, and the Shadowfold is never really explained. It's kind of just this river with darkness over it that was created by the past Darkling. I suppose I can't say it really wasn't explained because I just explained it to you, but basically, on the other side of the Shadowfold is another kind of, not continent, but another part of land where there's trading going on, and they have to reach this to get through it. Now, that sounds easy, like, okay, I just crossed through this darkness and I'm fine, but no, they are not, because the past Darkling, like the current Darkling's great-great-grandfather, who created the Shadowfold, also created these things called Volcra, which are evil birds, and I'm not okay with birds to begin with, so this has just furthered my phobia of birds. Let me explain. The Volcra are these giant, I want to say crows, and I mean massive crows that when a ship is crossing through, if they're not stealthy enough, these Volcras swoop down and start attacking them, and they will pick up humans and carry them off and eat them. Evil birds, evil birds. As we all can assume, as they're crossing the Shadowfold, the boat gets attacked, and you're sitting there and you're reading this, and you're like, okay, I know they live, yada yada yada, but how they end up living is actually quite interesting. Elena's friend, who she went on the boat with, not Mal, gets attacked by a Volcra, and she tries to save her friend, and her friend is getting carried off by this bird to, get eaten, and she fails. She then gets attacked by one of the Volcra. Mal comes to the rescue. He saves her, but a bird attacks him, and he's like bleeding on the ground or whatever, and she goes to save him, and she doesn't think she can do anything. She's just like, if we're gonna die together type of situation going on. Like, she had no plan, and then all of a sudden this big light just bursts from her, and the Volcra scatter, and the darkness is gone for all but a second. Then she passes out. I don't know what it is with young adult books with everybody passing out all the time. Like, no matter what happens, if something traumatic or something huge happens, it's always like, type of situation going on. Like, for some reason, they always pass out. Anyway, so Elena wakes up. She is being held hostage in this tent of soldiers, and she doesn't know what's going on because she's like, well, I thought we would have died. How did we live? Type of situation going on. So she is taken to the Darkling because they assume she has this power that she has kept hidden from them. And that's like a big no-no. And she's, defending herself going, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have a power. What? So it's kind of like this battle going on. You have one Grisha saying she doesn't have a power. You have someone else saying she does have a power. And there's this big fight that goes on. And then the Darkling, this guy gets up and he is, the almighty ruler of these people. And he's just like, silence! And then he goes and I think he grabs her wrist. And for some reason, he's kind of like an amplifier for her. He can bring out her power. And once he touches her, he kind of like forces it out of her. And there's just light everywhere. So they all know she has this ability. What you later find out is that this certain ability that she has is the one that everybody in fantasy Russia has been wanting. And, she's kind of like their savior. The Darkling, you would think he sounds evil. To me, every time I see that name, I'm like, Darkling, dark. He's not a good guy. His great-grandfather created the Shadowfold. Like, this guy cannot be up to any good. But as the story goes on, he starts telling her that he wants to use her to destroy the Shadowfold, to destroy the Volcra, to put everything right in its place, and so on and so forth. She believes him. And, it goes from there. At first, however, she kind of gets thrown into a carriage and taken to this palace. And she's still kind of like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. I don't have a power. In the same token, you would think that these Grishas are very powerful people. And that they have almighty rule, but that's not the case. There's a king, and then you have certain, I don't want to say like tribes of people, but groups of people do not like the Grisha. And they make it their goal to attack. So while she's traveling, her carriage gets attacked. They try to protect her. Doesn't really work. The Darkling comes to the rescue, and he kills this. Okay, so he kills this guy who's about to kill Elena because she's their savior. She cannot die. And you're just like, oh, okay, reading it. But how he kills this guy is just so cool because he runs through the forest and then does one of these, and it's just like this loud clap of thunder, and the guy is above her, and then just goes, ah! So he cuts this guy in half with a clap, and you're just like, what? And it was really cool, I'm not gonna lie. So Elena gets to this palace where it's kind of like a Hunger Games situation going on. She gets taken to this room, this woman comes in, kind of, pampers her, makes her shower, waxes her legs, whatever they do there, and makes her look pretty. That's kind of what you get with the Hunger Games for a minute there, because she's being shown off to the king of fantasy Russia, whereas Katniss was being shown off to the crazy, weird dressed people. The king then demands to see her power, and she's still in that sense of, I don't have a power, leave me alone situation going on. So the Darkling again has to kind of pull this power out of her to show that it really exists. This ignites hope throughout the entire nation of fantasy Russia. Everyone is trying to figure out why this girl of, I would say about 16 years old, is just now figuring out she has this power. Because usually they recruit you when you're children, and the mere fact that she was looked at by the Grisha and no one noticed she had this power is a mystery. So she goes through training. I'm not going to get into all of that. She begins to be able to control her power a little bit, but not to the full extent. The Darkling then begins talking to her about an amplifier, which is not what the Darkling is. At first, I assumed that's what he was, but he has kind of like a token. I think it's a tooth of some animal or something that is his amplifier. So if he holds it, his power is even stronger. She needs her own amplifier to make her power stronger. For her, he is saying that her amplifier is this white horse, a stag that is rarely ever seen, and that he will go and get this amplifier for her, and then she will have the ultimate control over her powers. Now, this is when the story really kind of begins to get interesting, because you start to see different sides to everything, because you start to see that the king is not all for the Grisha, that he's actually kind of a sick person. Elena, on the other hand, is starting to become more adapting to her power, and she starts to kind of enjoy it, really, when as before she didn't want anything to do with it. She's still upset about Mal because she doesn't know what happened to Mal, so she kind of tries to figure it out slowly, though she still wants nothing at all to do with the Grisha, except for the one that nobody likes. Then you have this old woman who is trying to teach Elena to control her ability. And then there's this big party they have for Elena where she has to show off her powers with the Darkling. Again, ignites hope throughout the entire nation of fantasy Russia. And then she kind of hooks up for a minute with the Darkling. Now, for me, the Darkling is like 100-some years old. And she's 16. I mean, the Grisha, they live for a long, long time. But this Darkling still looks really, really young, like 16, 17, 18 years old. He still looks really young, and that's kind of just strange to me. Because I'm not really understanding that bit, why some of the other Grishas age, whereas he doesn't. It's very confusing, but anyways. So her and the Darkling kind of hook up for a minute, and then she sees Mal, and then everything just kind of goes to shit from there. So she's in her room, she's all upset, and the Darkling kind of hinted, like, oh, can I come to your room tonight? Like, oh. And, you know, he had to leave because a stag's been found, and then the door is knocked upon, and she's kind of still upset because her and Mal have this big fight. And she opens the door, about to tell the Darkling, like, no, I don't want to talk to you right now, I want to be alone. She opens the door, it's the crazy old lady. This has to be, like, the most interesting part, because this is such a major twist to the story that I really didn't see coming, and I'm not going to share with you. Anyways, the crazy old lady explains some things to Elena, and gives her money and tells her to run. I'm not going to tell you why she has to run, but she has to run. Elena's running, she comes across Mal, they run together after already kind of being caught. They get captured again, the stag is found, the stag is killed, she is then held captive. And I'm not going to really tell you anything beyond this, because you really have to read it to really enjoy it and get into it, but, you know, things are not always as they appear, as you see with this book, and I just really love that aspect of it. I really, really did. So the ending is killer. It leaves with a great hook that leads into the next book that I really want to get, but I cannot get yet. So excited. On to what I liked and what I didn't like. We'll do what I didn't like because that is the smallest bit. The main thing I didn't like is the constant flip-flopping of this main character, and I'm starting to realize that with a lot of young adult novels is, again, with the love triangle, you get the, oh, but I love him, but he's really cute. Oh, but I love him. He's so sweet to me. Oh, but I love him. And it's this constant torn between two guys, and seriously, it's irritating. And I did not like that aspect of it, because she would be, you know, with the Darkling, thinking about kissing the Darkling, and then immediately walk off and be like, oh, but I miss Mal type of situation going on, and you're just sitting there like, what? That was my main issue with this book. That was really my only issue with this book, was just that. Also, I did not like the character Mal. I really, really didn't. The things I really did enjoy about this book, again, with the Grishas and, you know, the warriors, they each have their own specific ability. The Grishas, as I said, you know, one can control fire, another one's darkness, Elena's light, whereas these warriors, they each have, you know, the same ability, and that is to attack and rip out people's hearts. And to me, that is just so disturbingly awesome that I had to love it. I had to. Another thing I really loved about this book is the twists. You really don't get a lot of them, but when they do come, they are just like thrown in your face, and even you feel betrayed, because you're like, what? that, Leigh Bardugo could pull that off with the beginning of a novel. I mean, there were some bits in there that, could have been used in the second one or didn't really have to be there at all, but it all flowed together really nicely. I have to admit it. The writing was done brilliantly. You really feel compelled. You really are pulled into the story. You feel for these characters, even in the beginning. And that takes a lot of talent. I really did enjoy this book. And as I said, I'm really looking forward to getting Sage and Storm, but I cannot. And I will tell you why. I have seen it in Waterstones. I have debated on purchasing it. But what we have is Shadow and Bone, and then you have Sage and Storm, which is like massive compared to this little book. And I do not understand what is wrong with Waterstones that they do this to people. Just why? I mean, okay, it's not this big because this is a massive paperback book and I was quite frankly terrified upon receiving it. But, the mere fact that Sage and Storm is so much bigger than Shadow and Bone it really does just bother me. So I cannot purchase it yet, but hopefully if I get it off Book Depository soon, it will, be normal size, because if it's not, I might just spontaneously human combust. So that is my review on Shadow and Bone. I highly recommend it to everybody and anybody, even if you're not too into love triangles and everlasting love, because, that's in there, but it's still, apart from that, a very well-written, beautifully told story, and seriously, just go buy it. Go read it. Now it is on to the next books that I will be reading. Yellow Birds by Kevin Powers. So this will be the next book that I am reading. I know this is not the normal book that I usually read. For starters, it deals with war, and I'm usually not too keen on those type of stories. It also says that it's kind of like a biography, but not like a biography, and like a fiction in the same story, and I'm very confused by that already. But the cover is very soft, and I don't know why, but it is. This will be the next book on my reading list, so keep tuned for that. I give Shadow and Bone an A+. I highly recommend it to everybody. Go buy it, go read it, enjoy it. Plus, look at that cover. It's just so pretty. Keep tuned for Yellow Birds by Kevin Powers. It's small, so it shouldn't take me that long. And until then, you guys, happy reading!